reading and continuing our reading of Bhagavad-Gita as it is, chapter 4, beginning with text 25. Now we're going to hear the different kinds of sacrifices that the human beings perform in order to approach spiritual life. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Okay, chapter 4, text 25. Daivam evapade yagyam yoginak prayupasate brahmagna apade yagyam jagyaino jaginaivo pajuvati. Some yogis perfectly worship the demigods by offering different sacrifices to them, and some offer sacrifices in the fire of the Supreme Brahman. Purport. As described above, a person engaged in discharging duties in Krishna consciousness is also called a perfect yogi or a first-class mystic. But there are others who perform similar activities, but there are others also who perform similar activities in the worship of demigods, and still others who sacrifice to the Supreme Brahman, or the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord. So there are different kinds of sacrifices in terms of different categories. Such different categories of sacrifice by different types of performers only superficially demark varieties of sacrifice. Factually, sacrifice means to satisfy the Supreme Lord Vishnu, who is also known as Yagya. All the different varieties of sacrifice can be placed within two primary divisions, namely sacrifice of worldly possessions and sacrifice in pursuit of transcendental knowledge. Those who are in Krishna consciousness sacrifice all material possessions for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, while others, who want some temporary material happiness, sacrifice their possessions to satisfy demigods, such as Indra, the sun god, and so on. And others, who are impersonalists, sacrifice their identity by merging into the existence of the impersonal Brahman. The demigods are powerful living entities appointed by the Supreme Lord for the maintenance and supervision of all material functions like the heating, watering, and lighting of the universe. Those who are interested in material benefits worship the demigods by various sacrifices according to the Vedic rituals. They are called Bhaurishwara Vadi, or believers in many gods. But others, who worship the impersonal feature of the Absolute Truth and regard the forms of the demigods as temporary, sacrifice their individual selves in the supreme fire, and thus end their individual existences by merging into the existence of the Supreme. Such impersonalists sacrifice their time in philosophical speculation to understand the transcendental nature of the Supreme. In other words, the fruitive workers sacrifice their material possessions for material enjoyment, whereas the impersonalist sacrifices his material designations with a view to merging into the existence of the Supreme. For the impersonalist, the fire of altar of sacrifice is the Supreme Brahman, and the offering is the self being consumed by the fire of Brahman. The Krishna conscious person, like Arjuna, however, sacrifices everything for the satisfaction of Krishna, and thus all his material possessions, as well as his own self, everything is sacrificed for Krishna. Thus he is the first-class yogi, but he does not lose his individual existence. Text 26. Shotra din inriyanyanye samyamyagni shujuvati shabdha din vishayananya indriyagni shujuvati. Some The unadulterated brahmacharis sacrifice the hearing process and the senses in the fire of mental control, and others, the regulated householders, sacrifice the objects of the senses in the fire of the senses. Purport. The members of the four divisions of human life, namely the brahmachari, the grihastha, the vanaprastha, and the sannyasi, are all meant for our enjoying sense gratification, like the animals, the four orders of human life. Wait, let me read that again. Hare Krishna. Since human life is not meant for our enjoying sense gratification like the animals, the four orders of human life are so arranged that one may become perfect in spiritual life. The brahmacharis, or students under the care of a bona fide spiritual master, control the mind by abstaining from sense gratification. A brahmachari hears only words concerning Krishna consciousness. Hearing is the basic principle for understanding, and therefore the pure brahmachari engages fully in Hare Namanu Kirtanam, chanting and hearing the glories of the Lord. He restrains himself from the vibrations of material sounds, and his hearing is engaged in the transcendental sound vibration of Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Similarly, the householders who have some license for sense gratification perform such acts with great restraint. Sex life, intoxication, and meat eating are general tendencies of human society, but a regulated householder does not indulge in unrestricted sex life and other sense gratification. Marriage on the principles of religious life is therefore current in all civilized human society, because that is the way for restricted sex life. This restricted, unattached sex life is also a kind of yajna, because the restricted householder sacrifices his general tendency towards sense gratification for higher transcendental life. Text 27. Sarvanindriya karmani prana karmani chapade atma samyama yogagnau juvati jnana dipite. Others who are interested in achieving self-realization through control of the mind and senses offer the functions of all the senses and of the life breath as oblations into the fire of the controlled mind. Purport. The yoga system conceived by Patanjali is referred to herein. In the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, the soul is called Pratyag. Hare Krishna. We're just in the middle and we're recording. Okay? But thank you very much. Thank you very much. On your energy. Welcome. The yoga system conceived of by Patanjali is referred to herein. In the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, the soul is called Pratyag Atma and Parag Atma. As long as the soul is attached to sense enjoyment, it is called Parag Atma. But as soon as the same soul becomes detached from such sense enjoyment, it is called Prayag Atma. The soul is subjected to the functions of 10 kinds of air at work within the body, and this is perceived through the breathing system. The Patanjali system of yoga instructs one on how to control the functions of the body's air in a technical manner, so that ultimately all the functions of the air within become favorable for purifying the soul of material attachment. According to this yoga system, Pratyagatma is the ultimate goal. This Pratyagatma is withdrawn from activities in matter. The senses interact with the sense objects, like the ear for hearing, eyes for seeing, nose for smelling, tongue for tasting, hand for touching, and all of them are thus engaged in activities outside the self. They are called the functions of the pranavayu. The apanavayu goes downward. Vyanavayu acts to shrink and expand. Samanavayu adjusts equilibrium. and Udanavayu goes upwards. And when one is enlightened, one engages all these in searching for self-realization. Text 28. Drabyajagyastapodjagya yogajagyastapare swadhyaya jnanayagyascha yatayak shanshitavrtaha. Having accepted strict vows, some become enlightened by sacrificing their possessions, and others by performing severe austerities, by practicing the yoga of eightfold mysticism, or by studying the Vedas to advance in transcendental knowledge. Purport. These sacrifices may be fitted into various divisions. There are persons who are sacrificing their possessions in the form of various kinds of charities. In India, the rich mercantile community or princely orders open various kinds of charitable institutions like Dharmshala, Anachetra, and Atitishala, Anathalaya, and Vidyapit. Just for those who don't understand the words, Dharmashala is a place where people can go and stay at a sacred place. Anachetra is places where food is distributed to people who are hungry, or people who are going to places of pilgrimage. And Atitishala means places where people, unexpected guests, are welcomed and given facilities to stay. And Anathalaya, I don't know what that means. And Vidyapit means a place where knowledge is transmitted. In other countries too, there are many hospitals, old age homes, and similar charitable foundations meant for distributing food, education, and medical treatment free to the poor. All these charitable activities are called Dravyamaya Yagya. There are others who, for higher elevation in life, or for promotion to higher planets within the universe, voluntarily accept many kinds of austerities, such as Chandrayana and Chaturmasya. These processes entail severe vows for conducting life under certain rigid rules. For example, under the Chaturmasya vow, the candidate does not shave for 4 months during the year, July to October, does not eat certain foods, does not eat twice a day, or does not leave home. Such sacrifice of the comforts of life is called Tapomaya Yagya. There are still others who engage themselves in different kinds of mystic yogas, like the Patanjali system, for merging into the existence of the Absolute, or Hatha Yoga, or Ashtanga Yoga, for particular perfections. And some travel to all the sanctified places of pilgrimage. All these practices are called Yoga Yagya, sacrifice for a certain type of perfection in the material world. There are others who engage themselves in the studies of different Vedic literatures, specifically the Upanishads and the Vedanta Sutras, or the Sankhya philosophy. All these are called Swadhyaya Yagya, or engagement in the sacrifice of studies, or engagement in the sacrifice of studies. All these yogis are faithfully engaged in different types of sacrifice and are seeking a higher status of life. Krishna consciousness, however, is different from these because it is the direct service of the Supreme Lord. Krishna consciousness cannot be attained by any of the above-mentioned types of sacrifice, but can be attained only by the mercy of the Lord and his bona fide devotees. Therefore, Krishna consciousness is transcendental. Text 29. Apane jupati pranam, prane panam tatapade, prana pani gati rudva, pranayama parayanaha, apade niyatahara, pranan pranesha jupati. Still others who are inclined to the process of breath restraint, to remain in trance, practiced by offering the movement of the outgoing breath into the incoming, and the incoming breath into the outgoing, and thus at last remain in trance, stopping all breathing. Others, curtailing the eating process, offer the outgoing breath into itself as a sacrifice. Purport. This system of yoga for for controlling the breathing process is called pranayama. And in the beginning, it is practiced in the Hatha Yoga system through different sitting postures. All of these processes are recommended for controlling the senses and for advancement in spiritual realization. This practice involves controlling the airs within the body so as to reverse the directions of their passage. The apana air goes downward and the prana air goes up. The pranayama yogi practices breathing the opposite way until the currents are neutralized into puraka, equilibrium. Offering the exhaled breath into the inhaled breath is called rechaka. When both air currents are completely stopped, one is said to be in kumbhaka yoga. By practice of kumbhaka yoga, one can increase the duration of life for perfection in spiritual realization. The intelligent yogi is interested in attaining perfection in one life without waiting for the next. For by practicing kumbhaka yoga, the yogis increase the duration of life by many, many years. A Krishna-conscious person, however, being always situated in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, automatically becomes the controller of the senses. His senses, being always engaged in the service of Krishna, have no chance of becoming otherwise engaged. So at the end of life, he is naturally transferred to the transcendental plane of Lord Krishna. Consequently, he makes no attempt to increase his longevity. He is at once raised to the platform of liberation, as stated in Bhagavad-Gita. Mam chayo bibicharina bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatitaitan brahma bhuya yakalpate. One who engages in unalloyed devotional service to the Lord transcends the modes of material nature and is immediately elevated to the spiritual platform. A Krishna-conscious person begins from the transcendental stage, and he is constantly in that consciousness. Therefore, there is no falling down, and ultimately he enters into the abode of the Lord without delay. The practice of reduced eating is automatically done when one eats only Krishna prasadam, or food which is offered first to the Lord. Reducing the eating process is very helpful in the matter of sense control. And without sense control, there is no possibility of getting out of material entanglement. Text 30. Sarve pyete yagya vido yagya chapiti kalmashaha yagya shishtamrita bhujo yanti brahmasanatanam. All these performers who know the meaning of sacrifice become cleansed of sinful reactions, and having tasted the nectar of the results of sacrifices, they advance toward the supreme eternal atmosphere. Purport. From the foregoing explanation of different types of sacrifice, namely sacrifice of one's possessions, study of the Vedas or philosophical doctrines, and performance of the yoga system, it is found that the common aim of all is to control the senses. Sense gratification is the root cause of material existence. Therefore, unless and until one is situated on a platform apart from sense gratification, there is no chance of being elevated to the eternal platform of full knowledge, full bliss, and full life. This platform is in the eternal atmosphere, or Brahman atmosphere. All the above-mentioned sacrifices help one to become cleansed of the sinful reactions of material existence. By this advancement in life, not only does one become happy and opulent in this life, but also at the end, he enters into the eternal kingdom of God, either merging into the impersonal Brahman or associating with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Text 31. Nayam loko stajagyasya kutonyak kurusatama. Translation. O best of the Kuru dynasty, without sacrifice, one cannot live happily on this planet or in this life. What then of the next? Purport. Whatever form of material existence one is in, one is invariably ignorant of his real situation. In other words, existence in the material world is due to the multiple reactions to our sinful lives. Ignorance is the cause of sinful life, and sinful life is the cause of one's dragging on in material existence. The human form of life is the only loophole by which one may get out of this entanglement. The Vedas, therefore, give us a chance for escape by pointing out the paths of religion, economic comfort, regulated sense gratification, and at last, the means to get out of the miserable condition entirely. The path of religion, or the different kinds of sacrifice recommended above, automatically solves our economic problems. By performance of yajna, we can have enough food, enough milk, and so on, even if there is a so-called increase in population. When the body is fully supplied, naturally the next stage is to satisfy the senses. The Vedas prescribe, therefore, sacred marriage for regulated sense gratification. Thereby one is gradually elevated to the platform of release from material bondage. And the highest perfection of liberated life is to associate with the Supreme Lord. Perfection is achieved by performance of yajna, sacrifice, as described above. Now, if a person is not inclined to perform yajna, according to the Vedas, how can he expect a happy life, even in this body? And what to speak of another body on another planet? There are different grades of material comforts in different heavenly planets, and in all cases, there is immense happiness for persons engaged in different kinds of yajna. But the highest kind of happiness that a man can achieve is to be promoted to the spiritual planets by practice of Krishna consciousness. A life of Krishna consciousness is therefore the solution to all the problems of material existence. Text 32. Evam bahubida yajna bitata brahmano mukhe karmajan viditan sarvan evam gyatva vimokshase. All these different types of sacrifice are approved by the Vedas, and all of them are born of different types of work. Knowing them as such, you will become liberated. Purport. Different types of sacrifice, as described above, are mentioned in the Vedas to suit the different types of worker. Because men are so deeply absorbed in the bodily concept, these sacrifices are so arranged that one can work either with the body, with the mind, or with the intelligence. But all of them are recommended for ultimately bringing about liberation from the body. This is confirmed by the Lord herewith from his own mouth. Text 33. Shreyan dravyamaya yagyaj jnana yagya parantapa sarvam karma kilam partha jnane parisamapyate. Translation. O chastiser of the enemy, the sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than the mere sacrifice of material possessions. After all, O son of Pritha, all sacrifices of work culminate in transcendental knowledge. Purport. The purpose of all sacrifices is to arrive at the status of complete knowledge, then to gain release from material miseries, and ultimately to engage in loving transcendental service to the Supreme Lord, Krishna consciousness. Nonetheless, there is a mystery about all these different activities of sacrifice, and one should know this mystery. Sacrifices sometimes take different forms according to the particular faith of the performer. When one's faith reaches the stage of transcendental knowledge, the performer of sacrifices should be considered more advanced than those who simply sacrifice material possessions without such knowledge. For without attainment of knowledge, sacrifices remain on the material platform and bestow no spiritual benefit. Real knowledge culminates in Krishna consciousness, the highest stage of transcendental knowledge. Without the elevation of knowledge, sacrifices are simply material activities. When, however, they are elevated to the level of transcendental knowledge, all such activities enter onto the spiritual platform. Depending on differences in consciousness, sacrificial activities are sometimes called karma-kanda, fruitive activities, and sometimes jnana-kanda, knowledge in the pursuit of truth. It is better when the end is knowledge. Text 34. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upatekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. Purport. The path of spiritual realization is undoubtedly difficult. The Lord therefore advises us to approach a bona fide spiritual master in the line of disciplic succession from the Lord himself. No one can be a bona fide spiritual master without following this principle of disciplic succession. The Lord is the original spiritual master, and a person in the disciplic succession can convey the message of the Lord as it is to his disciple. No one can be spiritually realized by manufacturing his own process, as is the fashion of the foolish pretenders. The Bhagavatam says, Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. The path of religion is directly enunciated by the Lord. Therefore, mental speculation or dry arguments cannot help lead one to the right path. Nor by independent study of books of knowledge can one progress in spiritual life. One has to approach a bona fide spiritual master to receive the knowledge. Such a spiritual master should be accepted in full surrender, and one should serve the spiritual master like a menial servant, without false prestige. Satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master is the secret of advancement in spiritual life. Inquiries and submission constitute the proper combination for spiritual understanding. Unless there is submission and service, inquiries from the learned spiritual master will not be effective. One must be able to pass the test of the spiritual master, and when he sees the genuine desire of the disciple, he automatically blesses the disciple with genuine spiritual understanding. In this verse, both blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. I'll read that again. In this verse, both blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. Not only should one hear submissively from the spiritual master, but one must also get a clear understanding from him in submission and service and inquiries. A bona fide spiritual master is by nature very kind toward the disciple. Therefore, when the student is submissive and is always ready to render service, the reciprocation of knowledge and inquiries becomes perfect. Text 35. Yad gyatva punar moham evam yasyasi pandava yena bhutan yasheshani drakshasyat manyato mayi. Having obtained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never fall again into such illusion. For by this knowledge, you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme, or in other words, that they are mine. I'll read that again. Having obtained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never fall again into such illusion. For by this knowledge, you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme, or in other words, that they are mine. Purport. The result of receiving knowledge from a self-realized soul, or one who knows things as they are, is learning that all living beings are parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. The sense of an existence separate from Krishna is called Maya. Ma, not, ya, this. Some think that we have nothing to do with Krishna, that Krishna is only a great historical personality, and that the Absolute is the impersonal Brahman. It's got to be somebody's. Oh, fancy that. It's Amarendra's. Turn off the sound now. Put it on vibrate. Okay? Got to start from the purport again. We're going to fine you if you do that again. Purport. The result of receiving knowledge from a self-realized soul, or one who knows things as they are, is learning that all living beings are parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. The sense of an existence separate from Krishna is called Maya. Ma, not. Ya, this. Some think that we have nothing to do with Krishna, that Krishna is only a great historical personality, and that the Absolute is the impersonal Brahman. Factually, as it is stated in the Bhagavad-Gita, this impersonal Brahman is the personal effulgence of Krishna. Krishna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the cause of everything. In the Brahma Samhita, it is clearly stated that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes. Even the millions of incarnations are only his different expansions. Similarly, the living entities are also expansions of Krishna. The Mayavadi philosophers wrongly think that Krishna loses his own separate existence in his many expansions. This thought is material in nature. We have experience in the material world that a thing, when fragmentally distributed, loses its own original identity. But the Mayavadi philosophers fail to understand that absolute means that 1 plus 1 is equal to 1, and that 1 minus 1 is also equal to 1. This is the case in the absolute world. For want of sufficient knowledge in the absolute science, we are now covered with illusion, and therefore we think that we are separate from Krishna. Although we are separated, parts and parcels of Krishna, we are nevertheless not different from him. The bodily difference of the living entities is Maya, or not actual fact. We are all meant to satisfy Krishna. By Maya alone, Arjuna thought that the temporary bodily relationship with his kinsman was more important than his eternal spiritual relationship with Krishna. The whole teaching of the Gita is targeted toward this end, that a living being, as Krishna's eternal servitor, cannot be separated from Krishna, and that his sense of being an identity apart from Krishna is called Maya. The living entities, as separate parts and parcels of the Supreme, have a purpose to fulfill. Having forgotten that purpose since time immemorial, they are situated in different bodies as men, animals, demigods, and so on. Such bodily differences arise from forgetfulness of the transcendental service of the Lord. But when one is engaged in transcendental service through Krishna consciousness, one becomes at once liberated from this illusion. One can acquire such pure knowledge only from the bona fide spiritual master, and thereby avoid the delusion that the living entity is equal to Krishna. Perfect knowledge is that the Supreme Soul, Krishna, is the supreme shelter for all living entities, and giving up such shelter, the living entities are deluded by the material energy, imagining themselves to have a separate identity. Thus, under different standards of material identity, they become forgetful of Krishna. When, however, such deluded living entities become situated in Krishna consciousness, it is to be understood that they are on the path of liberation, as confirmed in the Bhagavatam. Muktir hitmanyata rupam surupena vyavastitihi. Liberation means to be situated in one's constitutional position as an eternal servitor of Krishna, Krishna consciousness. Text 36. Apichet asipapebhyak sarvebhyak papakritamaha sarvam jnana pilvenaiva vijinam santarishyasi. Even if you are considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. Purport. Proper understanding of one's constitutional position in relationship to Krishna is so nice that it can at once lift one from the struggle for existence that goes on in the ocean of nations. This material world is sometimes regarded as an ocean of nations, and sometimes as a blazing fire, a blazing forest. In the ocean, however expert a swimmer one may be, the struggle for existence is very severe. If one comes forward and lifts the struggling swimmer from the ocean, he is the greatest savior. Perfect knowledge received from the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the path of liberation. The boat of Krishna consciousness is very simple, but at the same time, the most sublime. Text 37. Yatai dang si samidugnir basmasat kuruter jana jnanagni sarvakarmani basmasat kurute tata. As a blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reactions to material activities. Purport. Perfect knowledge of self and superself and of their relationship is compared herein to fire. This fire not only burns up all reactions to impious activities, but also reactions to pious activities, turning them to ashes. There are many stages of reaction. Reaction in the making, reaction fructifying, reaction already achieved, and reaction a priori. But knowledge of the constitutional position of a living entity burns everything to ashes. When one is in complete knowledge, all reactions, both a priori and a posteriori, are consumed. In the Vedas, Brihad Aranyak Upanishad, it is stated, Ube, Ubaisha, Eti Taranch Amrita Sad Asaduni. One overcomes both the pious and impious reactions of work. Text 38. Na higyani na sadrisham pavitram ihavidyate tat swayam yogasam siddhak kalinat manivindati. In this world there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism, and one who has become accomplished in the practice of devotional service enjoys this knowledge within himself in due course of time. Purport. When we speak of transcendental knowledge, we do so in terms of spiritual understanding. When we speak of transcendental knowledge, we do so in terms of spiritual understanding. As such, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Ignorance is the cause of our bondage, and knowledge is the cause of our liberation. This knowledge is the mature fruit of devotional service, and when one is situated in transcendental knowledge, he need not search for peace elsewhere, for he enjoys peace within himself. In other words, this knowledge and peace culminate in Krishna consciousness. That is the last word in the Bhagavad-Gita. Let that sink in for a moment. Text 39. Chat hava labate jnanam tatpadak samyatendriyaha jnanam labdva param shantim achidenadi gacchati. A faithful man who is dedicated to transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses is eligible to achieve such knowledge, and having achieved it, he quickly attains the supreme spiritual peace. Purport. Such knowledge in Krishna consciousness can be achieved by a faithful person who believes firmly in Krishna. One is called a faithful man who thinks that simply by acting in Krishna consciousness, he can attain the highest perfection. This faith is attained by the discharge of devotional service and by the chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Which cleanses one's heart of all material dirt. Over and above this, one should control the senses. A person who is faithful to Krishna and who controls the senses can easily attain perfection in the knowledge of Krishna consciousness without delay. Text 40. Agyaschar shadadanascha Sankshayatma vinashyati Nayam lokasti naparo Nasukam sankshayatmanaha. But ignorant and faithless persons who doubt the revealed scriptures do not attain God consciousness. They fall down. For the doubting soul, there is happiness neither in this world nor in the next. Purport. Out of many standard and authoritative revealed scriptures, the Bhagavad-Gita is the best. Persons who are almost like animals have no faith in or knowledge of the standard revealed scriptures. And some, even though they have knowledge of or can cite passages from the revealed scriptures, have actually no faith in these words. Even though others may have faith in scriptures like Bhagavad-Gita, they do not believe in or worship the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Such persons cannot have any standing in Krishna consciousness. They fall down. Out of all the above-mentioned persons, those who have no faith and are always doubtful make no progress at all. Men without faith in God and His revealed word find no good in this world, nor in the next. For them there is no happiness whatsoever. One should therefore follow the principles of revealed scriptures with faith, and thereby be raised to the platform of knowledge. Only this knowledge will help one become promoted to the transcendental platform of spiritual understanding. In other words, doubtful persons have no status whatsoever in spiritual emancipation. One should therefore follow in the footsteps of great acharyas who are in the disciplic succession and thereby attain success. Text 41. Yoga sanyasta karmanam jnana sanchina samshayam atmavantam nakarmani nibadnanti dhananjaya. Translation. One who acts in devotional service, renouncing the fruits of his actions, and whose doubts have been destroyed by transcendental knowledge, is situated factually in the self. Thus he is not bound by the reactions of work, O conqueror of riches. Purport. One who follows the instruction of the Bhagavad-Gita as it is imparted by the Lord, the personality of Godhead Himself, becomes free from all doubts by the grace of transcendental knowledge. He, as part and parcel of the Lord in full consciousness, is already established in self-knowledge. As such, he is undoubtedly above bondage to action. Text 42. Tasmat ajnana sambhutam ritstam jnana sinatmanaha chitvainam sankshayam yogam atishto tishta bharata. Therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharat, stand and fight. Purport. The yoga system instructed in this chapter is called Sanatana Yoga, or eternal activities performed by the living entity. This yoga has two divisions of sacrificial actions. One is called sacrifice of one's material possessions, and the other is called knowledge of self, which is pure spiritual activity. If sacrifice of one's material possessions is not dovetailed for spiritual realization, then such sacrifice becomes material. But one who performs such sacrifices with a spiritual objective or in devotional service makes a perfect sacrifice. When we come to spiritual activities, we find that these are also divided into two, namely, understanding of one's own self, or one's constitutional position, and the truth regarding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who follows the path of Bhagavad-Gita as it is can very easily understand these two important divisions of spiritual knowledge. For him there is no difficulty in obtaining perfect knowledge of the self as part and parcel of the Lord. As such, and such understanding is beneficial, for such a person can easily understand the transcendental activities of the Lord. In the beginning of this chapter, the transcendental activities of the Lord were discussed by the Supreme Lord himself. One who does not understand the instructions of the Gita is faithless, and is to be understood to be misusing the fragmental independence awarded. Let's repeat that again. One who does not understand the instructions of the Gita is faithless, and is to be considered to be misusing the fragmental independence awarded to him by the Lord. In spite of such instructions, one who does not understand the real nature of the Lord as the eternal, blissful, all-knowing personality of Godhead is certainly fool number one. Ignorance can be removed by gradual acceptance of the principles of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is awakened by different types of sacrifices to the demigods, sacrifice to Brahman, sacrifice in celibacy, in household life, in controlling the senses, in practicing mystic yoga, in penance, in foregoing material possessions, in studying the Vedas, and in partaking of the social institution called Varnashram Dharma. All of these are known as sacrifice, and all of them are based on regulated action. But within all these activities, the important factor is self-realization. One who seeks that objective is the real student of Bhagavad-Gita. But one who doubts the authority of Krishna falls back. One is therefore advised to study Bhagavad-Gita or any other scripture under a bona fide spiritual master with service and surrender. A bona fide spiritual master is in the disciplic succession from time eternal, and he does not deviate at all from the instructions of the Supreme Lord as they were imparted millions of years ago to the sun god, from whom the instructions of Bhagavad-Gita have come down to the earthly kingdom. One should therefore follow the path of Bhagavad-Gita as it is expressed in the Gita itself, and beware of self-interested people after personal aggrandizement who deviate others from the actual path. The Lord is definitely the supreme person, and his activities are transcendental. One who understands this is a liberated person from the very beginning of his study of Bhagavad-Gita. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 4th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad-Gita in the matter of transcendental knowledge. Hare Krishna. So I want to take us a little bit into chapter 5. Time's going very fast. Hare Krishna. Chapter 5, Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. There's a little summary right at the beginning that's not in the book, but I'll read it anyway. Outwardly, performing all actions, but inwardly renouncing their fruits, the wise man, purified by the fire of transcendental knowledge, attains peace, detachment, forbearance, spiritual vision, and bliss. Text 1. Arjuna Uvacha Sanyasam Kamanam Krishna Punar Yogam Chasangshasi Yachtriya Itayorekam Tanme Bruhi Sunishchitam. Arjuna said, O Krishna, first of all you asked me to renounce work, and then again you recommend work with devotion. Now will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial? Purport. In this 5th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita, the Lord says that work in devotional service is better than dry mental speculation. Devotional service is easier than the latter because, being transcendental in nature, it frees one from reaction. In the 2nd chapter, preliminary knowledge of the soul and its entanglement in the material body were explained. How to get out of this material encagement by Buddha Yoga or devotional service was also explained therein. In the third chapter, it was explained that a person who is situated on the platform of knowledge no longer has any duties to perform. And in the fourth chapter, the Lord told Arjuna that all kinds of sacrificial work culminate in knowledge. However, at the end of the fourth chapter, the Lord advised Arjuna to wake up and fight, being situated in perfect knowledge. Therefore, by simultaneously stressing the importance of both work and devotion and inaction in knowledge, Krishna has perplexed Arjuna and confused his determination. Arjuna understands that renunciation in knowledge involves cessation of all kinds of work performed as sense activities, but if one performs work in devotional service, then how work is stopped? Then how is work stopped? I'll repeat that again. But if one performs work in devotional service, then how is work stopped? In other words, he thinks that sannyas, or renunciation in knowledge, should be altogether free from all kinds of activity, because work and renunciation appear to him to be incompatible. He appears not to have understood that work in full knowledge is non-reactive and is therefore the same as inaction. He inquires, therefore, whether he should cease work altogether or work with full knowledge. Text 2. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Sannyasa Kamayogascha Nishrayasya Kadau Ubau Tayostu Kama Sannyasat Karma Yogo Vishishyate. The personality of Godhead replied, the renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation, but of the two, work in devotional service is better than renunciation of work. Purport. Fruitive activities, seeking sense gratification, are cause for material bondage. As long as one is engaged in activities aimed at improving the standard of bodily comfort, one is sure to transmigrate to different types of bodies, thereby continuing material bondage perpetually. Srimad Bhagavatam confirms this as follows: Nunam pramatak kurute vikarma yadindriya pritaya aprinoti nasadu manye yata atmanoyam asan apiklesha daasadeyaha parabhavas tabarabo dajato yavan najigyasata atmatatvam yavat kriyas tabadidam manovai karmatmakam yena sharira bandha evam manak karmavasham priyunkte avidyayat manyupadiyamane pritir nayavan mahibasudeve namuchate dehagoyagena tavat. People are mad after sense gratification, and they do not know that this present body, which is full of miseries, is a result of one's fruitive activities in the past. Although this body is temporary, it is always giving one trouble in many ways. Therefore, to act for sense gratification is not good. One is considered to be a failure in life as long as he makes no inquiry about his real identity. As long as he does not know his real identity, he has to work for fruitive results for sense gratification, and as long as one is engrossed in the consciousness of sense gratification, one has to transmigrate from one body to another. Although the mind may be engrossed in fruitive activities and influenced by ignorance, one must develop a love for devotional service to Vasudeva. Only then can one have the opportunity to get out of the bondage of material existence. So that's the translation of those verses we just quoted from the Bhagavatam. Therefore, jnana, or knowledge that one is not this material body, but spirit soul, is not sufficient for liberation. One has to act in the status of spirit soul. Otherwise, there is no escape from material bondage. Action in Krishna consciousness is not, however, action on the material platform. Activities performed in full knowledge strengthen one's advancement in real knowledge. Without Krishna consciousness, mere renunciation of fruitive activities does not actually purify the heart of a conditioned soul. As long as the heart is not purified, one has to work on the fruitive platform. But action in Krishna consciousness automatically helps one escape the result of fruitive action, so that one need not descend to the material platform. Therefore, action in Krishna consciousness is always superior to renunciation, which always entails a risk of falling. Renunciation without Krishna consciousness is incomplete, as is confirmed by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Prapanchagataya buddhya harisambhandi vastunaha mumukshabi parityago vairagyam palgukatyate. When persons eager to achieve liberation renounce things related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, thinking them to be material, their renunciation is called incomplete. Renunciation is complete when it is in the knowledge that everything in existence belongs to the Lord and that no one should claim proprietorship over anything. One should understand that factually nothing belongs to anyone. When there is the question of, then where is the question of renunciation? One who knows that everything is Krishna's property is always situated in renunciation. Since everything belongs to Krishna, everything should be employed in the service of Krishna. This perfect form of action in Krishna consciousness is far better than any amount of artificial renunciation by a sannyasi of the Mayavadi school. Geya sanitya sannyasi yona dveshti nakankshati nirdvandvo his mahabaho sukham bandhat pramuchite. Translation: one who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to be always renounced. Such a person, free from all dualities, easily overcomes material bondage and is completely liberated, O mighty armed Arjuna. Purport: one who is fully in Krishna consciousness is always a renouncer because he feels neither hatred nor desire for the results of his actions. Such a renouncer, dedicated to the transcendental loving service of the Lord, is fully qualified in knowledge because he knows his constitutional position in his relationship with Krishna. He knows fully well that Krishna is the whole and that he is part and parcel of Krishna. Such knowledge is perfect because it is qualitatively and quantitatively correct. The concept of oneness with Krishna is incorrect because the part cannot be equal to the whole. Knowledge that one is one in quality, yet different in quantity, is correct transcendental knowledge, leading one to become full in himself, having nothing to aspire to or lament over. There is no duality in his mind because whatever he does for Krishna. Being thus freed from the platform of dualities, he is liberated, even in this material world. Text 4. Sankhya yogao prithak bala pravadanti napanditaha ekamapyasti tak samyag ubayor vindate palam. Only the ignorant speak of devotional service, karma yoga, as being different from the analytical study of the material world, Sankhya. Those who are actually learned say that he who applies himself well to one of these paths achieves the results of both. Purport: the aim of analytical study of the material world is to find the soul of existence. The soul of the material world is Vishnu, or the Supersoul. Devotional service to the Lord entails service to the Supersoul. One process is to find the root of the tree, and the other is to water the root. The real student of Sankhya philosophy finds the root of the material world, Vishnu, and then, in perfect knowledge, engages himself in the service of the Lord. Therefore, in essence, there is no difference between the two, because the aim of both is Vishnu. Those who do not know the ultimate end say that the purposes of Sankhya and Karma Yoga are not the same, but one who is learned knows the unifying aim in these different processes. Text 5. Yat sankyai prapyate stanam tad yogayat abhigamyate ekam sankyam cha yogam cha yak pashyati sapashyati. One who knows that the position reached by means of analytical study can also be attained by devotional service, and who therefore sees analytical study and devotional service to be on the same level, sees things as they are. Purport. The real purpose of philosophical research is to find the ultimate goal of life. Since the ultimate goal of life is self-realization, there is no difference between the conclusion reached by the two processes. By Sankhya philosophical research, one comes to the conclusion that a living entity is not a part and parcel of the material world, but of the Supreme Spirit whole. Consequently, the Spirit soul has nothing to do with the material world. His actions must be in some relation with the Supreme. When he acts in Krishna consciousness, he is actually in his constitutional position. In the first process, Sankhya, one has to become detached from matter, and in the devotional yoga process, one has to attach himself to the work of Krishna consciousness. Factually, both processes are the same, although superficially one process appears to involve detachment and the other process appears to involve attachment. Detachment from matter and attachment to Krishna are one and the same. One who can see this sees things as they are. Text 6. Sanyasastu mahabaho dukkam aptum mayogataha yoga yukto munir brahma nachidena digachati. Merely renouncing all activities, yet not engaging in the devotional service of the Lord, cannot make one happy. But a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service can achieve the Supreme without delay. Purport. There are two classes of sannyasis, or persons in the renounced order of life. The Mayavadi sannyasis are engaged in the study of Sankhya philosophy, whereas the Vaishnava sannyasis are engaged in the study of Bhagavatam philosophy, which affords the proper commentary on the Vedanta Sutras. The Mayavadi sannyasis also study the Vedanta Sutras, but use their own commentary called Shariraka Bhashya, written by Shankaracharya. The students of the Bhagavat school are engaged in the devotional service of the Lord according to Pancharatriki regulations, and therefore the Vaishnava sannyasis have multiple engagements in the transcendental service of the Lord. The Vaishnava sannyasis have nothing to do with material activities, and yet they perform various activities in their devotional service to the Lord. But the Mayavadi sannyasis, engaged in the studies of Sankhya and Vedanta and speculation, cannot relish the transcendental service of the Lord. Because their studies become very tedious, they sometimes become tired of Brahman speculation, and thus they take shelter of the Bhagavatam without proper understanding. Consequently, their study of Srimad Bhagavatam, the Srimad Bhagavatam, becomes troublesome. Dry speculations and impersonal interpretations by artificial means are all useless for the Mayavadi sannyasis. The Vaishnava sannyasis, who are engaged in devotional service, are happy in the discharge of their transcendental duties, and they have the guarantee of ultimate entrance into the kingdom of God. The Mayavadi sannyasis sometimes fall down from the path of self-realization and again enter into material activities of a philanthropic and altruistic nature, which are nothing but material engagements. Therefore, the conclusion is that those who are engaged in Krishna conscious activities are better situated than the sannyasis engaged in simple speculation about what is Brahman and what is not Brahman, although they too come to Krishna consciousness after many births. Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriya sarva bhutatma bhutatma kurvanapi nalipyate. One who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled. Purport. One who is on the path of liberation by Krishna consciousness is very dear to every living being, and every living being is dear to him. This is due to his Krishna consciousness. Such a person cannot think of any living being as separate from Krishna, just as the leaves and branches of a tree are not separate from the tree. He knows very well that by pouring water on the root of the tree, the water will be distributed to all the leaves and branches, or by supplying food to the stomach, the energy is automatically distributed throughout the body. Because one who works in Krishna consciousness is servant to all, he is very dear to everyone. And because everyone is satisfied by his work, he is pure in Krishna consciousness. Because he is pure in consciousness, his mind is completely controlled. And because his mind is controlled, his senses are also controlled. Because his mind is always fixed on Krishna, there is no chance of his being deviated from Krishna. Nor is there a chance that he will engage his senses in matters other than the service of the Lord. He does not like to hear anything except topics relating to Krishna. He does not like to eat anything which is not offered to Krishna. And he does not wish to go anywhere if Krishna is not involved. Therefore, his senses are controlled. A man of controlled senses cannot be offensive to anyone. One may ask, why then was Arjuna offensive in battle to others? Wasn't he in Krishna consciousness? Arjuna was only superficially offensive because, as has already been explained in the second chapter, all the assembled persons on the battlefield would continue to live individually, as the soul cannot be slain. So, spiritually, no one was killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Only their dresses were changed by the order of Krishna, who was personally present. Therefore, Arjuna, while fighting on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, was not really fighting at all. He was simply carrying out the orders of Krishna in full Krishna consciousness. Such a person is never entangled in the reactions of work. So, I'll read one more verse. Then we get to a stopping place. Two more verses, actually. Text 8 and 9. Naiva kinchit karomi ti yukto manyeta tatpavit pashan shrinvan sprishan drigran ashnan gachchan sapanchvasan pralapan vistrijan grinan unmishan nimashan napi indriyan indriyarteshu vartanta itidarayan. A person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in sleep, seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, or opening or closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he is aloof from them. Purport. A person in Krishna consciousness is pure in his existence. and consequently he has nothing to do with any work which depends upon 5 immediate and remote causes: the doer, the work, the situation, the endeavor, and fortune. This is because he is engaged in the loving transcendental service of Krishna. Although he appears to be acting with his body and senses, he is always conscious of his actual position, which is spiritual engagement. In material consciousness, the senses are engaged in sense gratification, but in Krishna consciousness, the senses are engaged in the satisfaction of Krishna's senses. Therefore, the Krishna conscious person is always free, even though he appears to be engaged in affairs of the senses. Activities such as seeing and hearing are actions of the senses meant for receiving knowledge, whereas moving, speaking, evacuating, and so on are actions of the senses meant for work. A Krishna conscious person is never affected by the actions of the senses. He cannot, whoops, I just went to another place. He cannot perform any act except in the service of the Lord, because he knows that he is the eternal servitor of the Lord. And we'll stop there tonight. The next verse is a nice verse and stopping place. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Shri Bhagavad-Gita ki jai.
Amen.
So, any reflections, questions, comments?
You are saying the control of the senses, but
Krishna is saying that control of the senses, but
how to really control? They are saying that in Krishna.
but how to really control? They say in Krishna consciousness,
It's so difficult,
it's
sense
so difficult,
gratification is
sense
always
gratification is.
How to avoid all those? They are such a triangular, sense gratification.
Triangulation. Okay, now we're going to go for it once more time. Okay? If you think of Krishna always, and you do what you're doing for his satisfaction, and you don't do something whimsically that he doesn't, that you know you don't, that he doesn't like, then your senses are controlled. You don't have to artificially stop your senses or stop your mind or, bite your tongue and grin and bear it, You have to constantly engage in activities and connect those activities to Krishna. By how? By thinking of Krishna always. We already heard in the 4th chapter, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yujita. Krishna's asking Arjuna to fight, but to think of me while you fight. That doesn't mean that Krishna's going with his bow and he has to remember all these mantras and he's going Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. His wind weapon or his, whatever kind of weapon he's shooting won't work if he doesn't chant the proper mantra. And he has to be in the proper place at the proper time. So you do your duty without attachment for the pleasure of Krishna. And you connect your work, and everyone knows this, you give part of the fruits to the deity, you give part of the fruits to the movement, to the devotees, and in that way you purify your work. And you give your service, the activities of your senses, for the pleasure of Krishna, and you purify your senses. And you always think of Krishna, and you purify your mind. And you eat Krishna prasadam, and you purify your tongue, and your belly, and your everything. Then you get a spiritual body. But if you don't do those things, even though you know you should do those things, then you have to struggle. Then it seems difficult. The activities are not difficult. Hare Krishna, how difficult is that? Taking Krishna prasadam, how difficult is that? Really?
Earlier, Maharaj had said that we take prasadam and we're able to take less, and I just don't I don't really see that too often.
That's because you,
Some devotees like to keep serving people and give them lectures.
that's because you've only been here for a couple of years. And you're only such a young person, and you're, out there working like a madman, but after a while, your material sense says, okay, enough is enough. Then you'll learn to, take things off the plate, or, slow down in terms of the amount that you eat. But Lord Chaitanya's movement, frankly speaking, Lord Chaitanya, when he served up prasadam himself, he had very big hands, He was like 6'6", I think. Or no, 7'6". He was 7'6" or 7'4", either 4 or 6. And he had all his limbs were proportionally large. And he could pass up prasadam. What 5 people could eat, he could put on the plate with one hand, And then he would sit there and say, give him more, take more, take more. So, in the beginning when Prabhupada came to New York City, and the devotees didn't have any idea what they were doing, and Prabhupada would cook himself, and you can imagine how good it was when Prabhupada cooked himself. It was really good. And he would just sit there and he would serve them and serve them and serve them. And they would just get so intoxicated, they would just go away. They didn't even think to help Prabhupada clean up afterwards. They would just go out the door, like, not being able to walk a straight line. So intoxicated. And then one day, one of them thought, wow, Prabhupada, do you want us to help you clean up? And Prabhupada said, yes. Why not? And that's when it started.
Awesome.
Yes?
I remember one thing when you're talking about remembering Krishna always. One lecture I heard of Amal Bhakta Swami, he told, he put a tattoo Krishna, so whenever I see time, I could see Krishna as the time.
Yeah.
And then he said, like, when I wake up in the morning, when I go to brush, I say it loud, Krishna, I'm brushing my teeth for you. Krishna, I'm eating for you. Krishna, I'm doing this for you.
Yeah.
So like that, he was like telling, like, you could offer every activity to Krishna. But so he was saying, like, he would say it loud to practice, like.
What? Give me the book. Get the book and read from chapter 18, verse 57. Put this over close to him so we can hear. Yeah. So there's a place in the middle of the purport where there's a quotation mark. Read a couple of sentences before that. There's a quotation mark in the middle of the purport.
Yeah.
Read a couple of sentences before that.
The Sanskrit word mat paraha
That's it.
is very important in this verse. It indicates that one has no goal in life save and except acting in Krishna consciousness just to satisfy Krishna. And while working in that way, one should think of Krishna only.
Quote. Go ahead.
I have been appointed to discharge this particular duty by Krishna. While acting in such a way, one naturally has to think of Krishna. This is perfect Krishna consciousness.
That's it. So we have to learn the book. Learn the books. Try to help others understand the books. And when you find little gems like that, which go exactly with what Amala Bhakta Maharaj was saying, exactly, he's preaching right out of the book. And if you use those little gems, either a verse or a sentence or an idea in a preaching situation to someone to try to explain to them Krishna consciousness, then if you do that 3 or 4 times, then that stays with you. Krishna will give you that as a gift, and you can relish those jewels.
Thank you. And thank you for engaging us in this reading, Like a couple of years ago, Virat Swami Maharaj emphasized that you should read Prabhupada books every day. But on and off, like I would read and then for a week and then I would, the taste or it would just go away away, then I'll start again, then it'll go away. Because he told me, like, when I was asking questions, I really doubt, where am I going? I'm doing so many services, I'm doing that and this, but I doubt where am I going? I can't really see where am I going or am I making any advancement. Then Giriraj Swami told that you have all these doubts because you don't read Prabhupada's books. So you should read every day, and thank you for doing this and engaging us or giving us the taste to do it.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. That's the goal of my life. You just gave me the goal of my life. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Yes.
Also, when I first came to Krishna consciousness, my spiritual master, Krishna Maharaj, he told me to read hour and a half every day. I did that, and then when I got married, I still did it. After some time, I couldn't do it at all. And then one day he was like talking to me and my husband. He asked us what was our schedule, and he said, I don't know how I can encourage you to read. And he said, I'll give you my personal copy of Bhagavad-Gita. Maybe it will inspire you. Then he gave us his notes because computer was coming out. He said, I can't ask you to read because you're doing so much service. So, I've been thinking always to read every day. And last year when you came, it helped us a lot to read 41 pages. But she kept on, I couldn't. I've been off and on. But this is really helping me. I'm praying to you to give me mercy.
Well,
so
it's
I
like
can
this.
continue.
It's like this. I have been stressing this 41-page thing. It's not mechanical. It's not mechanical. It's not if you don't do 41 pages, then you're doing something wrong or you're falling down from the standard or whatever. It's not like that. I just picked that number because when Vaisheshika Prabhu and I first started this program, this mission or campaign, we came up with it, to both of us, we came up with this, we were trying to think of a catchphrase. This is to attract people into this. So Vaisheshika Prabhu said, be a sage. And I said, page by page. Like we just clicked. That's it. That's the motto. So then we figured, okay, so let's figure out how long it takes to read different books at different times. And I selected this 41 pages because, when you read the books in a fast enough pace that you can remember a little bit better. We're not sages of the Vedic age. Our memories are not so good. It says right in the Bhagavatam. But, reading these books every day is the same as meditation. These are the thoughts, that if you can get these thoughts and keep them in your brain, but Prabhu, Maharaj, I can't keep anything in my brain. That's okay. If you just keep hearing while you're hearing, especially if you read out loud to yourself, and the sound of Prabhupada's voice, because this is Prabhupada's voice, these purports, and it's Krishna's voice, the translation of Prabhupada's translation of Krishna's words. So it's non-different from meditation. So while you're doing it, while you're reading out loud to yourself, you will get the same, eventually, you will get the same as you get here when I'm reading to you. Because it's the same. It's Srila Prabhupada's association and Krishna's association. And once you get a taste for Krishna's association and Prabhupada's association, automatically, like it said right at the end of that last chapter, automatically the other attachments kind of fall away without you trying, without you, struggling and, cursing and whatever. So then, if because of how much service you have, you can't absolutely do 41 pages, then bring it down to 10 pages or 5 pages even. But if you do it every day, you have to adjust according to time and situation. And then you will stay connected, you will feel connected. It will empower your service. Because unless you hear and chant properly, your service becomes something else. It will become a burden. Mechanical, which is a burden. I mean, there was a letter that Prabhupada wrote to Satsvarup Maharaj. I think it was 1972 or 3. It was when the deities were first installed in Dallas, Radhakalachandji. I don't remember exactly the year, but I think it was 72, 73, right around in there. And the letter, I didn't read such Rupa's letter, but Prabhupada's response was clear that he was questioning, what was going on in the deity department. So Prabhupada wrote in his letter, he says, unless you hear and chant sufficiently and properly when you dress the deities, it will be just like you're dressing dolls. And therefore when you see someone dress the deity who is absorbed in Krishna consciousness and actually hearing, and his service is empowered, and any service is empowered like that, then the deities were like, whoa, who dressed that day? Then you find out. This is how you find out that Krishna is a person. So just for the pleasure of the Vaishnavas, I already read this once today, but I will read it again. This is Sanatana Goswami's glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam, and I will end with that, with a link. Okay? This is from the Krishna Lila Stava by Srila Sanatana Goswami. It's verse 412 through 416. It's the 107th obeisance that he intended to offer 108 obeisances to Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. So this is the 107th obeisance towards the end of the book. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedayika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drik Prada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of light to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidvandodita Ditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Man Nistaraka Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadhutadhayin atini chutatakara hanamun chagadachinmam premna rit kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
That is the Srimad Bhagavatam. And the Bhagavad-Gita is non-different. Bhagavad-Gita is spoken by Krishna, the Bhagavatam is spoken about Krishna. Serve the book Bhagavata by hearing it with faith and love. And then your perfection is guaranteed. Once you get this, that the holy name of the Lord is Krishna, the deity form of the Lord is Krishna, and the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad-Gita, is Krishna, not different than Krishna. You want to associate with Krishna? Who doesn't want to associate with Krishna? Therefore, arrange your service. Reduce something so that you can hear every day. And your service will become alive, more alive, and you'll get more energy to do more even. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Bol.
And you were only for shoes then. Good. Oh. Hare Krishna, look at here. Oh, that's your group, man. The vibes are good, the vibes are good. Nice reading? Very nice. This group met with the 12 to 16-year-old youth.
Can you give prasad to everybody, please?
Just give me one grape each. Amarinda, give me one grape. Okay, now it's all taken care of.
Thank you so much.
Hey, hold on a minute before you leave. Okay, Maharaj, I'll see you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Bol. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice tonight.
Huh?
It was exciting tonight.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. How are you gonna get out of here? Cause I don't want to take a little of this out.
The night of her wedding, 19th.
Yeah.
You've been doing the salmon and everything.
Shit.
That's next Thursday.
Yeah, I can do that.
Who's the baby you want me to?
Hare Krishna, see you later. Hare Krishna. What's that? Some salad.
I feel like I haven't seen you in like a